The best time of the year is happening, fellas. It's Oscar season. We're right in the middle of the Oscar time where fantastic movies are coming out, and this year has some of the strongest Oscar films to be released in a long time. I'd say since 2014. Every film I've seen this year has been so good, and the thought of having to make a list on choosing the films that I believe will be nominated for Best Picture makes my brain hurt. I'm gonna do it anyways. I'm gonna preface this video by saying that I haven't seen every film that I'm going to list for Best Picture, but this isn't really about watching every film as it is studying how each studio is pushing their film for Best Picture and analyzing the trends of each movie. So me seeing every film isn't completely necessary. Although I do plan on doing a video on what I think will win when we get closer to the Oscar show, and for that video I will be planning on watching everything that is nominated. However, for this video, I'm only going to be listing the movies that are the most likely to be nominated for Best Picture. My number one pick doesn't necessarily mean that I think that film will eventually win, just that the likelihood that it'll be nominated is practically a lock. I'm gonna be listing 10 films as that's the limit for the amount of films that can be nominated, but the more likely outcome is that there's only gonna be 8 or 7 films nominated. As for the other categories, I'll take a look at those in another video. So with all the context out of the way, let's start out with my number 10 pick. A Beautiful Day in the Neighborhood seems like it's going for Tom Hanks' performance and campaigning for that rather than the film for Best Picture. There just doesn't seem to be that much talk about the actual film, but everyone is talking about how incredible Tom Hanks is. The love for that performance could overshadow the possibility of this film getting a nomination for Best Picture. I will say that if Richard Jewell ends up being amazing, I believe it'll bump A Beautiful Day in the Neighborhood out for a Best Picture nomination. If Richard Jewell ends up being not too great, there is a chance this movie sneaks in there, but I wouldn't be surprised if it gets shut out. You can't count out Greta Gerwig. She is a wonderful director and is coming off the incredible Lady Bird, which was nominated for 5 Oscars. I think this movie has a good chance of getting a nomination. The film comes out in late December, really going for that last push and being fresh in the minds of Oscar voters. And with the cast involved in the film as well as the aforementioned Greta Gerwig, the only reason I'm not putting this higher on the list is because the film isn't out for another month, so who knows if this will blow Oscar voters' minds or if it'll end up being disappointing. 1917 is another film where I'm banking on the talent. Sam Mendes has made some brilliant films and one of my favorites of all time. His name alone is a key reason as to why I have this film on the list. Not to mention that it's a war film, which typically does well in terms of Oscar nominations. But also knowing that the film is done to look like one continuous shot gives it that flashy appeal that Oscar voters love. The film is going to be releasing in December, more than likely to push for the Oscars. All that's left is to see what the film's quality is like. If it's really good, I'd say this is more of a lock, but as it stands right now without seeing the film, I believe it's very likely it'll end up being nominated. To Be Ferrari was without a doubt a movie I loved, and it seems like everyone else seems to love it too. Critics are finding it great, audience members are having a blast with it, it's been doing amazing at the box office, and the cast and crew screams Oscars. This is a safe bet for a nomination as it's a fun, well-told story that will resonate with everyone. I think it's safe to say that To Be Ferrari will end up finding its way to a nomination. I adore this movie. I have it this high on the list because of everything it's accomplished. Being the first rated R film to cross $1 billion, the love that people have for this movie, Joaquin Phoenix's performance, it's been able to do a lot. However, while I think this has a very good chance of being nominated, Joaquin Phoenix's performance could overshadow the film's chance at getting a Best Picture nomination, just like with A Beautiful Day in the Neighborhood. Not to mention, I do know there are a good amount of people that aren't a fan of this film, and Oscar voters could very well share that same sentiment with those who dislike it. I really think the chance for this movie being nominated all relies on whether it can still carry momentum up until the nominations come out. As it stands right now, it's riding the wave of praise pretty damn well. If I had to bet on it right now, today, I do expect Joker to be nominated for Best Picture. Now we're getting into the films that I believe are practically a lock for a nomination. Jojo Rabbit was loved for the most part by critics, audiences seem to be enjoying it too, and it's a story about World War II. Granted, it's told in a comedic and lighthearted way, but it's still World War II, and we all know those do well at the Oscars. It's a great movie that has moments that will pull on your heartstrings and ends with a beautiful message that'll leave a lasting impact on viewers. You can definitely count on this one being nominated. The hype for Marriage Story is very real. All of the opinions I've heard are nothing short of fantastic, some even calling this a masterpiece. People are praising the screenplay, performances, the film, everything. It's inevitable that Marriage Story will end up with a nomination, and I predict it'll be one of the frontrunners to win the award as we get closer to the Oscar show. Of all the films to be the most likely to get nominated, Parasite is my favorite. It is such an engaging film that tells a lot about social classes without being so in your face about it. I have not heard of one person who was not blown away by this film. The praise for Parasite is definitely there, and the only reason I don't have it higher is strictly because it's a foreign film. Yes, I think it's a stupid reason to not put it higher as well, but I'm just going by what the Oscars normally do. If it were my awards show, this would end up being number one, without a doubt. The Irishman is Martin Scorsese returning to what he does best, a gangster film with a cast we've all grown to love. This is definitely a film Oscar voters will eat up, not to mention it's a genre that Scorsese is more than familiar with, and everyone who has seen it thus far has been saying it's fantastic. There is only one reason as to why this is not at the number one spot, and that's because it's being released by Netflix. Now, Roma was the first Netflix film to be nominated for Best Picture at the Oscars, but I think there is still a stigma behind Netflix films, and I hope it doesn't affect the movie's chances at a nomination. I really doubt that they'll shut out a Martin Scorsese film, especially with this cast, but the whole Netflix thing is still at the back of my mind. You all probably know I'm not a fan of this film, but this video is not the place to share my opinion all over again. If you're curious, you can check out my video on it that I made a couple months ago. But back on topic. Even though this film came out in the summertime, it has not lost momentum, and critics specifically seem to love this film. Tarantino is already a household name with the Oscar voters, so they'll be more than happy to honor him. Couple that with the great cast and the fact that this movie is literally about Hollywood, it's safe to say you'll see this film being nominated. Well, that's that. Like I said before, I'll do another video when the nominations are out with my thoughts on them, and one final video on what films I think will win and what should win. Should be tons of fun. With all that being said, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Thank you all so much for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.